This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. David Schemm, Kansas Farm Service Agency State Executive Director, begins today's show as he highlights programs for beginning farmers and online access for FSA producers. Continuing the show is Victor Gomez-Leon, K-State Dairy Extension Specialist, as he discusses research on how changing the ratio of fatty acids in dairy cows' diets impact their milk yield and reproduction. Part of the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast in today's show as they welcome special guest Christine Navarre to chat about emergency plans for livestock. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show with the State Executive Director of the Kansas Farm Service Agency, David Schemm. David, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Shelby. You know, we had a nice long weekend here, and the great thing is that I think a lot of our state got some moisture there. You know, some of it I think maybe was a little bit shy or missed it, and then, unfortunately, as we look here at this week, and we know as we get into springtime here, Kansas is known for its winds. So we've got a little bit of wind, I think, to endure here for a little while.
And while we're talking about what's happening around the state, you were recently at Kansas Farm Bureau's Young Farmers and Ranchers Conference. And while you were there, what were you talking about with young producers?
Yeah, it was a great opportunity to be able to chat with those people there, Shelby. You know, it's always exciting. Even looking at my own operation and my oldest son having come back and running the operation now, it's just always exciting to go to that KFB's YF&R and see the young producer. You know, some of them are first time, a lot of them are, you know, another generation coming back to the farm to know that truly the legacy that Kansas has with its farmers and ranchers out there are in great hands there. Had the opportunity to host a group there, have a group there, and talk with them about our beginning farmer loans out there and what loans that they could be able to qualify for there. And, you know, I know we've talked about it before, Shelby, but really encourage our producers out there. And had the opportunity to chat with how would I say, not necessarily a young producer, but a beginning producer. She was coming back to the operation at a little bit older age there. When I talk about our beginning farmer loans there, just definitely want to emphasize it is not based upon age. It's the amount of time that they have been, quote unquote, actively engaged in farming. So for those producers out there who are just getting into production ag, you know, with whatever size, it doesn't mean if it's large scale or small scale or coming back to an operation. Age does not limit your ability to come into our local office there. You can ask about a beginning farmer's loan. If they're not a loan office place, they can definitely direct you to a loan official and one of our loan offices there. For those producers that are in that, quote unquote, maybe they're not the 19, 21-year-old, 23-year-old young producer there, the qualification for the program, Shelby, is that you can't have been actively farming for longer than 10 years. But there is a minimum that you need to have at least 3 years of some type of management experience with the operation. And so the one producer that came up to me at the YF&R was actually in their mid-40s. And so, again, the program would still work for them if they haven't been on the operation. And they had just returned here about the past 2 or 3 years there. So one thing I want to emphasize there for sure is that program there is not just age, obviously, for our young producers that are coming back there, and that the program that KFB had, very much a great program to utilize.
And for when you're talking with beginning farmers, do you see something that they commonly forget about when it comes to the Farm Service Agency, or more assistance is needed to be provided in an area?
So Shelby, the one area that I think that sometimes producers forget about or could be, is referenced sometimes is our 50/50 loans. And it's for those producers out there who are looking at either expanding, starting their own operation, particularly as many of our producers know out there, one of the biggest assets that they all have there is obviously the land there. So, if they're looking at buying, whether it's farm ground or if it's grassland pasture there, kind of our 50/50 loan for those producers out there that, they can go to a commercial lender and get 50% of that loan, work with FSA, and we guarantee that side of it. But we also provide, loans for down payment and also the other 30 to 40% of that loan there to those beginning farmers there to be able to purchase that, again, pasture, farmland, whatever there. That's always encouraged if they're kind of looking at that as an option, go into that county office, talk to them there. We have other tools available for them. Our farm storage facility loans can definitely help those producers procuring and it's not just grain bins in those scenarios, but it can be, a truck and a grain trailer or possibly a skid steer or auger, various things like that. So make sure that they definitely reach out to our offices and we'll do our best to assist them, those beginning farmers. That truly, it's something I'm very passionate about to try to make sure that we assure that those young farmers, beginning farmers have the opportunity that so many of us have, and to make sure that we continue that legacy of the state and of all those families out there.
Are there currently other programs or loans taking place at the Farm Service Agency?
Well, obviously a lot of our loans are there able to avail themselves any time come in and talk to an office there and talking about loans. As far as programs, a lot of programs are part of our regular farm bill or things we sign up people for, whether it's CRP. A new CRP sign up was just recently announced there by the administrator there. So if producers have expiring CRP acres or CRP acres they're looking at enroll, definitely reach out to your local county office there on that there. The other program, though, that is obviously sign up will be starting here just shortly. And I know there's been a fair amount of talk about, Shelby, is our Farmer Bridge Assistance Program that was recently announced, and sign up is going to be coming here shortly.
And what does that program do?
So the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program is a program that was developed through the Trump administration and Secretary Rawlins to be able to basically help producers with the extremely high input costs that they're dealing with, and then also the low commodity prices just because of the lack of trade agreement that we saw underneath the last administration. And it's a per acre payment based upon the crops that were planted and the acreage report that producers provided us this last year here. So one of the things continually that we're trying to make sure that we definitely embrace underneath this administration is technology and making things more at ease and more convenient for our producers out there, knowing how busy they are out there. So a little bit of different things that's going on with this Farmer Bridge Assistance Program is that there actually will not be a physical flyer mailed out to our producers, but our producers should be receiving an email. In fact, some of them may have already received an email encouraging them to go to Farmers.gov and get their login.gov account set up there. It's really neat. We've been working with a few select producers, kind of stepping them through the process of getting their accounts set up. An ability to do that. We're going to be doing training this week as well as next week in anticipation of the program. Sign up probably starting here this next week here. And it's going to be able to be done electronically through Farmers.gov there. And so really encourage producers, if they haven't already gotten to Farmers.gov, to get in there, get a Farmers.gov, get their login.gov, and you will be able to apply for this program much quicker and faster electronically than necessarily going into our county offices. Now, with that being said, absolutely, if you need some help signing up, come into the county office. Our county office people will love to help people out there and or print off that application or get the producer signed up for that there. Definitely we want to make sure that we're servicing our producers out there on that. But we really encourage producers there to go through that process of getting that electronic sign up set up.
And I'm assuming the electronic sign up is not something just happening in Kansas, but happening across the U.S. for farm service agencies?
Absolutely, Shelby. It's happening across the nation there. The neat thing about it there is that once these producers has access into that, I think they're going to really like what they see in their ability, not just for a farmer bridge assistance, but it's going to be even at acreage reporting, various things like that. And I know firsthand, I've heard firsthand from a lot of producers there, even like acreage reporting, that can be a very busy time of the year for our producer when some of those deadlines come up. And that ability for them to be able to flip open that laptop, get on there, quickly get signed up or report their acreage or whatever they need to be doing there. Just the ability of the program and what we're doing, it's going to really help out our county offices to make sure that they can continue to serve our producers and get the work done that needs to be.
David, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Always a pleasure, Shelby. And again, producers, any questions on this, don't hesitate to reach out to us, our county office. Our people absolutely are there to help all of our producers.
That was State Executive Director of the Kansas Farm Service Agency, David Schemm. As always, if you have questions about programs or anything related to the Farm Service Agency, you can check out their website, Farmers.gov. If you're wanting to go in person to your local service center but don't know where it is, you can locate it also by going to Farmers.gov. And I will also put that link in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Victor Gomez-Leon as he discusses research that he's done that looks into how milk yield and reproduction could be affected. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing research that's been done that looks into the impact on milk production and reproduction in dairy cows. And to talk about it, we're joined by K-State Dairy Extension Specialist Victor Gomez-Leon. Victor, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Shelby. Thanks for having me today. Excited to share some of our findings with you and your audience.
So, Victor, as we're looking into this research, what was it?
So we essentially fed dairy cows a diet that is low in omega-3, and we had another group of cows that ate a diet that was enriched in omega-3. So we talk about the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, in which one diet is a higher ratio, meaning they have high omega-6, and another one is a lower ratio, meaning they have high omega-3s compared to low omega-6. And so in generally speaking, diets that we feed dairy cows, they are enriched with omega-6, and those are pro-inflammatory or activate pro-inflammatory pathways. So omega-6 are coming probably from corn and things that are more common for the dairy industry, whereas omega-3s, they will come more from maybe flax seeds, fish for humans, but in the case of dairy cows, the product that we use also uses some algae product in combination with the flax seeds. So what that allows is that we are feeding the same amount of fat to the cow, but with a different fat profile. So it's not about fat content, it's about the type of fat that we're feeding the cow. And the difference, again, between omega-6 to omega-3 is omega-6 is more pro-inflammatory, whether omega-3 is more anti-inflammatory fats. So like for humans, people will take omega-3 pills, eat more fish, try maybe a Mediterranean diet. And so that's the idea that we're testing here for dairy cows. It's like, okay, if we feed fats that are rich in omega-3, what that's going to do to the dairy cow in terms of milk production and reproduction, because we know that for human, for example, consuming higher amounts of omega-3 could be beneficial for reproduction, for example. And there is an extensive body of literature that has been of research that has been conducted where when we fed omega-3 to dairy cows, we see benefits on reproduction.
And wanting to take a quick look more into the milk production portion of things, what impact did you see when that ratio was higher omega-3 than the baseline?
Yeah, so just to recap, in this study, we essentially have a group of cows eating a higher diet on omega-6 fat content and one group with higher omega-3 fat content. We fed those diets starting like 15 days after calving to about 140 days after calving. So we evaluate milk production during all those weeks, months, whatever you want to call it. And what we see or what we saw in terms of milk production is like the cows fed the high omega-3 diet, they produce about 2 to 3 or 4 pounds more milk than the cows that were fed the low omega-3 diets. Now, keep in mind that this study was done at the Kansas Dairy Teaching Research Center, and so the Kansas State Dairy Farm. And we have a very high producing herd. Our cows produce about 100 pounds per cow per day of milk. So omega-3 cows were producing 102, 104 pounds per day overall. So a big increase there, a significant increase in milk production there over, again, from 50 days after calving to 140 days after calving.
Did you see any changes in the milk content?
Yeah, so we actually thought that, or we wanted to test if feeding the omega-3 will translate into a milk that had higher omega-3 content. I mean, it's pretty standard for the industry when they are processing milk to add omega-3 to the milk. I probably shouldn't get a lot into that topic because it's not my area, but we did see an increase in omega-3 content in the milk of cows that were fed higher omega-3. And, with that, we don't know what that could translate to human consumption or to processing, or maybe even just to the calf that are consuming that milk at the farm. So those are probably potential areas that we'll follow up later.
And so after you stopped feeding the more omega-3 rich diet after those 140 days post-calving, on day 141 or past that, did you see a difference in those cattle?
We actually didn't follow up that cattle after that, but it has been shown that many of these treatments early during lactation, they have a carryover effect. So I will expect that there is also some effects in the lactation of those animals.
Within the study, we mentioned reproduction in dairy cattle. And did you see anything with that with these diets?
Yes. So my background is reproduction. So actually, the study, one of the main focus was to evaluate how the pregnancy will develop. And so we study the corpus luteum, progesterone, which are the structures that maintain the pregnancy in cattle, in human actually as well. We also evaluate the embryo size to see if the embryo will grow larger, affected by the omega-3. We evaluate even the blood flow, so how much blood is being pumped to the corpus luteum, again, the structure that maintains the pregnancy. And we saw some specific and interesting differences there. So cows that were fed higher omega-3s, they had greater blood flow to the ovary at specific times. And let me see, I don't think embryo size was different, and I believe progesterone was not different. The size of the CL, though, so the size of the structure maintaining the pregnancy was also larger at some specific points. So just indicating that there may be some physiologic advantages of feeding omega-3 in cattle that could help with what others have seen, that is increased pregnancy maintenance when cows are fed omega-3 diets.
What further research are you hoping to do on this, Victor?
So I got into this area because traditionally some colleagues in the animal science and industry department have studied the effects of omega-3 in other species like beef and maybe poultry. So after seeing these initial results in dairy cattle, we are wanting to put a proposal together for a multidisciplinary study, if you will. Right now, we have a lot of beef on dairy going on in the dairy industry. So we breed dairy cows with beef semen. So we continue producing milk on those cows, but we take that calf and take it to a ranch, and then it gets into the beef industry chain. And so, we wonder what epigenetic effects, so anything that we are doing with the dam, how that's affecting the fetus and then the calf once it's on the ground, and whether those things are going to be translated not just into the milk of the dam, but also into the beef of the animals that are going to be produced from those beef on dairies. We probably are going to use some poultry model because, it's a faster model. They incorporate pretty easily these omega-3s because one of the challenges we have with both dairy and beef is that the rumen, one of the four stomachs in the cow, it digests some of these omega-3s, and so it doesn't get as absorbed as well in the intestines of the animal. So yeah, just brainstorming on what we're going to put together is going to be a big proposal, multidisciplinary, and it's going to be very excited as well because we are probably going to be able to see some big problems that affect human reproduction maybe. So like high pregnancy losses and how omega-3s can help to decrease those.
If people have questions about this research, what's your recommendation for finding out more information?
I would say maybe on the K-State website, the Dairy Extension website, they can find some of our contacts. I would probably encourage them to reach either Mike Brook, Billy Brown, or myself who are working on the dairy side within Animal Science and Industry Department. Mike and Billy are nutritionists. I'm more on the repro side, but as you can see from this study, I'm exploring a lot of nutrition and reproduction. We put together also a kind of a short communication or a producer-focused abstract in one of the K-State agricultural stations. So if somebody contacts me, I'll be happy to share that because I probably don't have the exact website to share right now.
Victor, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, again, I appreciate you having us here or having me here, and I enjoy sharing a little bit of what we are doing.
That was Kansas State University Dairy Extension Specialist Victor Gomez-Leon as he discussed recent research that is taking place at K-State's Dairy Unit. If you have questions, I will link the email addresses for Billy Brown, Victor Gomez-Leon, and Mike Brook in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll have this week's Beef Cattle Institute segment. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our show with part of the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast with Brad White, Philip Lancaster, Bob Larson, Dustin Pendle, and special guest Christine Navarre.
What are some of the things if someone asks you about emergency preparedness on a cow-calf operation?
Yeah, I think about, what are going to be the needs of those cattle, right after a storm or a fire or whatever that we can prepare for ahead of time. So thinking about, first of all, water. How would you get water to cattle? We've got to keep them hydrated. Low stress cattle handling. So anytime we get one of these big events, cattle are stressed. You may be having to move cattle and you may have to relocate them. You may have to commingle them and anything. All of our herd health programs, when we talk about vaccination and nutrition and all those preventive herd health programs, that just leads to resilience. So those cattle are much more likely to come through one of these events if they're already in good condition and have a really good immune system. How are we going to get feed to these animals? Trying to avoid feed changes. So, are they going to be on pasture? So again, just trying to minimize that. making sure that we are going to prepare for power outages, communication. So battery backups for your cell phones. If cell phone doesn't work, knowing how to do Wi-Fi calling, having cash. So when you have widespread power outages, I use my credit card for everything now, but it doesn't work when there's no power and you need to buy fuel. Making sure you've got a generator that works, making sure that you keep fuel available, making sure your record keeping is up to date and that it's stored somewhere appropriate in the cloud. So all of your cattle records need to be in the cloud, all of your personal family records, all of those things. It's real important that you are able to get to those things. So those are just some of the things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of good information there. It's hard to keep up on all those long term, right? You know, if something's so if it's a hurricane, you're like, okay, I better start to get stuff ready. A lot of times here, we have a tornado and I better get stuff ready maybe 15 minutes, right? So you should have all those prepped beforehand. And Dustin, I know you had some thoughts on emergency preparedness.
Yeah, I was and saw this topic for today, and I went out and just did some searching. There's quite a bit on different land-grant universities' websites on being prepared. So I would encourage you to go out and take a look. And in particular, one at Nebraska that talked about, well, floods and fires, not hurricanes.
Yeah,
surprisingly.
They get rare hurricanes in Nebraska.
Yeah.
But it was broken out into what to do before, during, and after. And so I thought that was pretty nice. And so I thought a lot more about the what to do before, communication plan, developing a response plan. You talked about kind of a disaster kit or whatnot. So some of those kinds of things, making sure your employees know.
The first thing she mentioned was water. And water is a hard one. What do you guys, Bob and Philip, how do I get prepared for and let me give you a scenario. I water the cattle typically out of automatic waters and off a well. And if I have power go out for days, how do I prepare for that?
I think that's one that people really should think about, because water consumption, that's first thing that cattle would run into trouble. I mean, they can go a few days without feed. They can't go very long without water. And so if you know that, you've got well-based water, I think you've got to have some backup generator to get the well going again, or a way to get them to surface water or something like that. And a lot of times, so in our part of the country, it may be really bad snowstorms or ice storms or something like that, where now moving the cattle becomes a real challenge. So maybe I'm forced to keep them where they are, but we don't have power. And so I think that's something that really everybody should have thought through, is how are we going to get water?
I think the other one you didn't mention is it takes a lot of work, but some ag tanks and be able to haul water from a city source if need be, so that you can keep water to cattle, because you might be in a situation where that's the only option.
Once again, that was part of the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast. If you'd like to hear the full podcast episode, you can do so by going to ksubci.org or by following the link in today's show notes on agtoday.net. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.